Right on, team. So let's dive into this. First, welcome. I'm so happy you're all here. I'm so grateful for your spending your time and energy with me today and doing this type of class. And I just really appreciate you, and I appreciate that you're here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Melanie Curtis, and I've mentioned a bit about the tech, but I'll be sharing my screen the whole time. Feel free to type in the chat throughout. Everyone will be muted, and I'm going to take Q&A at the end. So this is a longer session because there's a lot of information that I want to cover, but I also wanted to leave ample time for Q&A. So that's why it's an hour and a half versus a sort of the more standard hour. Right on. So we are here today to talk about how to be a, sought after skydiving coach and organizer. And so this webinar is built on my experience being a load organizer and skydiving coach, getting hired around the world. It's also built on my experience of being in the role of hiring load organizers and coaches for big events through the 6 years that I worked at Skydive Elsinore as their director of marketing and events. So it's also built on the years since when DZOs or DZMs have reached out to me and asked for recommendations on who they could and should bring in based on their particular needs for an event or their chosen culture at their drop zone. So yeah, so today it's a lot about me, which I don't love, but it's built on that, all of my unique experience. So I absolutely invite other thoughts. I totally invite other thoughts as we go along that might help those who are looking to grow in the sport as a leader, influencer, mentor, and or grow as a professional skydiver. Sound fair? Cool. All right. Yes. this beaut. I'd say for the most part that when we are young in anything, we can't even imagine being someone who ends up in the role of helping others or getting hired or paid to do it. I certainly didn't. Skydiving was in my family. So my dad's a pilot. He owned a drop zone. So I grew up around skydiving. I grew up sitting through the first jump course time and time again. I was even allowed to jump when I was 16, but I didn't because I was too scared. I just wasn't ready. So basically, I started skydiving like so many others, fear keeping me from doing something, and of course, in our sport, fear is a really useful and important thing to temper our decisions when it comes to safety and things like that. So all of that's good, but I'm talking about the fear, the kind of fear that keeps us immobilized and keeps us stuck and stopped from doing the things that we want to do, and the kind of fear that holds us back from doing the things we want to do and holds us back in the ways that we don't need to be held back. So at 18 years old, after thinking about it and freaking out about it multiple times over, I just kind of came to a day where I said, that's it. Tomorrow I'm doing it. And, that was a sort of different kind of commitment. Like I was really ready to just stop waiting. And I wanted to free myself from all the worry and freak out of just contemplating doing something. So the next day I did it. I was not messing around. The next day I actually made my first jump. And for me, I was definitely one of those that was instantly and forever altered. And at that point, essentially every choice I made in my adult life from that point forward was in some way connected to including and increasing skydiving in my life. So this picture is you're witnessing the energy of a girl about to go on her 4th static line jump. And this is actually my close friend, Linda, who I met in elementary school. She's going on her 1st jump, and she's still one of my closest friends today. But so anyway, as we go through today's material, depending on where you are in your own trajectory in skydiving, you might feel resistance come up in you as I share things. You might think, I could never do that. I'm not there yet. Only people with XYZ could do that. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. That's stupid. That won't work for me. Like, the list of resistances that can come up in us are probably endless. So, whatever comes up in you, I just invite you to watch for that, as those are often places where when we bring consciousness to them, we can open doors of possibility for our lives and involvement in skydiving that we otherwise, would leave closed. So just keep that in mind. Right on. So after college, I worked at an investment bank. I moved to New York City. I went the very classic route in life. I made a lot of money, spent it all on skydiving. And I initially moved to New York because I love New York. It's the best. And living in this kind of city, you clearly can't skydive, but I had to figure out ways to, get to the drop zone. And I had to figure out ways to just make it work. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the ranch used to have this book of everybody who was a club member. I think it was called the Ranch Roundup. I'm not really sure. But basically the point is that it was a literal printed book of faces. So that'll give you some sense of how long ago it was. Like, Facebook was not a thing. We had printed books of people. So anyway, I went through that book, and I didn't have a car. I had no money. I was barely, surviving living in New York, even working at an investment bank. So I went through that book and I said, okay, I got to figure out get a ride to the drop zone. Went through the book, called everybody, starting with the A's, and called everybody who lived in New York until somebody answered. And ironically, the funny thing is that the person who answered the phone that day, his name is Stephen Baker, and he's still one of my favorite, most cherished friends in the world. But he's like, yeah, I'm already up here, but take this bus and then this train and I'll in this taxi and I'll pick you up. So it was this sort of mission to even get up to the ranch. But I did it, because I was wanting to go skydiving and meet new friends in this new life I was starting off on. So in this time, I also found, so in my time in New York, I found four-way formation skydiving, which shifted me into my more sort of niche obsession in the sport. Skydiving, four-way formation skydiving was like really my first love in the sport. And I was lucky enough to get to transfer with my investment banking job to Los Angeles, where I was making even more money. I finally had a car. I had the ability to go to the drop zone every single weekend. So I did. Outside of rent and food and that stuff, I really spent all of my money and time on team training, tunnel coaching, gear, other fun jumps, etc. So this road, I actually would park on this road because there were spaces that were free street parking. So I worked on New York hours. So every single morning I would get up super early to go and get one of those free spots and then walk the rest of the way to that building, which is where I worked, so that I didn't have to pay the $300 a month on parking in sort of this LA posh, Century City building. And I would do that every single week. Friday, LA traffic, I drive to the drop zone. Sunday, repeat the whole thing. Another thing that's sort of relevant to the point I'm getting to is that when I was learning and I was in my student training, which I did in Australia, before I even had 100 jumps, I would sit on the side of the roundabout waiting for my ride, bringing the cheapest canned beans and spaghetti to eat. I ended up working this job at this diet food place as well because I wanted to make money to spend it on more jumps. And so even doing that job, I had to ride 45 minutes one way on my bike at 5 a.m. And funny enough, like with this job or with this place, they never put bread crusts into the like meals for the people. They would just throw them out. And I was like, what in the hell? Why? It was just so crazy. So what I did was I started taking all those bread crusts, and I had loaves and loaves of free bread crusts that I put in my freezer. And it was all so I could make, like, save money in every way possible to spend it on skydiving. So the point I'm making with these stories in this part is that anytime we really want to learn something, when we really want to involve ourselves deeply in a sport, a community, an education, an experience, it really requires hustle and compromise. The hustle to do the things that are hard, you know, and do them with the consistency over time so that we actually earn the experience we need to get good. You know, I didn't want to park on the street. That sucked. You know, I didn't want to eat canned spaghetti for my life, but I did it, you know, and I didn't necessarily, want to spend every single waking hour. I mean, I guess I did, but the point is that the hustle is an important piece. The compromise comes in because there's infinite number of things that we can do with our time, right? There's an infinite number of things we can do with our time, energy, money, all of that. So I lived in Southern California for 9 years, and I probably, seriously, guys, could count on one hand the number of times that I went to the beach. I chose to spend my time and focused really on the area that I wanted to grow the most. So I chose to spend my time and money on that coaching and training and getting better so I could do more. Now, this is not always the path for everyone, so obviously take my sharing with that grain of salt for you. But so this focus, this intense focus that I had, and this intense commitment and drive had me doing four-way teams, and it led my amateur four-way team, Adrenaline, to win the gold medal in the advanced division at the United States Nationals in 2004. This is the best picture I could find, guys. It's like so bad and pixelated. But we're young and ridiculous, and I love it. So after this, after winning the gold in advanced, I was elated, of course. And at the same time, I was clearly becoming increasingly unhappy working at the bank. I started to behave and be like a person that I knew I wasn't, that I knew I didn't want to be. You know, I dreaded going to work. I would snap at people who would come over to my desk and ask me to do stuff. Like, it's just not good. And it was clear. So I was at this crossroads where I was either going to be happy with what I had done in skydiving or not. And I wasn't really clear. So I knew I needed more, but I just really wasn't sure what that was. So I started studying for the GMAT, which is the biz test you take to get into business school. I mean, seriously, team, I could easily have gone the route of Wall Street and big business. I was on that path. And that path is great, by the way, for the people that it's for. It's awesome. So there's no judgment on any of these choices. It's just that was what was happening for me. So something in me knew that it wasn't the right path for me. So I bought the job search book, What Color is Your Parachute? I always laugh at that because the only reason I bought that book is because there was the word parachute in the title. I was so insanely obsessed. I was completely insanely obsessed. But a question in that book changed my life. What would you do if money were no object? So when I read that question, I was like, skydiving, duh, of course. And then just as instantly as I answered the question with skydiving, I said, but I don't want to know the laundry list of reasons for why I couldn't work in skydiving came up, why it wasn't for me. And so because my answer was so instant, I said, okay, skydiving, duh, but I don't want to live in a trailer in a drop zone. I don't want to eat ramen noodles for my life. All of these things came up that immediately stopped me. Because my answer was so instant, though, to this question, I was like, it kind of drove me to start really considering that answer and started me to go, just like to open my mind to looking around like, wait, could this potentially be possible? In what way? And I started to realize that there were professional skydivers that existed that didn't live in a trailer on the drop zone, that apparently didn't eat ramen noodles for every meal. And so that really started to open my mind. Specifically, I saw a gap in what Skydive Elsinore needed at the time. And Skydive Elsinore was my home drop zone at the time. It seemed really like they needed someone to step in and lead the experience side of the drop zone, to take on events and bring energy and electricity and creativity to them. So I basically pitched them to hire me in that role. So I pitched them to create that role and hire me into it. And they did. And so 8 months later, and I'll say this, 8 months, I think this is a key point, is that this was not a reckless fuck it choice. This wasn't me going, I got to get out of the investment bank. This sucks. And I'll do anything. It wasn't like that. It was like, I want to be really mindful about this transition and do it in a responsible way. So 8 months later, over those 8 months, we developed the role and the plan. And 8 months later, I left the bank and started what felt like to me was the best job in skydiving. Now, the beauty, of course, is that you certainly do not have to quit your job at all and to start being of service at your drop zone. You don't have to quit your job or go full-time or go pro or be insane to start building your skills as a coach and mentor. Love it. While I was training with my four-way teams, so while I was working at the bank, while I was training with my four-way teams, I had already started to coach and organize younger jumpers on the off weekends. So I'd already begun to step up and into that type of role at my drop zone. And doing this really set the stage for the future opportunities I was able to get. So you can start small, you really can start wherever. You can do 2 ways and 3 ways, And one thing I always like to tell people and share with people is that drop zones are almost always looking for people to step up. They're small businesses. They aren't necessarily going to reach out and talk to you, but they might do that. But if not, you can pitch yourself. You can pitch yourself as a new LO looking to learn and looking to welcome and help new young jumpers and organize small, safe jumps within your skill set as a starting point for your own growth in this type of leadership role. Now, you might be wondering, like, well, how do I know if I'm ready to start helping people in that way? And I'd say the honest answer is that you don't. And so when in doubt, ask someone that's more experienced than you. So ideally, I would say ask the experienced person at your drop zone that also is in that vibe and culture of championing others and someone who really actively supports growth and learning at your DZ. So you don't just want to ask the person who's perceptibly the most experienced. Ideally, you can find someone to talk to that you can see and feel is in a more supportive role. Sound fair? Cool. So why do I share all this? So the first thing to becoming a sought after coach and LO, in my opinion, is that you have to do it. You just have to do it at all. We have to start doing something, right? And so even when things seem so far out of our grasp or, entirely impossible, we need to start anyway, sort of moving toward those things. Otherwise, we're guaranteeing that we'll never do it. We're guaranteeing the outcome of us never doing it. Now, this is a note. This next thing I'm going to say is a special mention for DZOs or DZMs that are listening. is that my take is that for a person that you think is worth taking a chance on and giving this type of opportunity to, I would advise you to give those people a comp slot for their new load organizing. Not for everything, no, not a full sponsorship or anything, but like they get a comp slot while they are doing this. And a lot of drop zones already do that. But if not, the reason I say this is that new and young LOs often feel, and I certainly did, feel this immense sense of like, holy fucking shit, I get free jumps. Oh my God. It's this amazing sort of fuel. And this is what it was for me. It fueled me to be out helping others and creating fun for us all just even more. So think of that. Consider that. Right on. So the next thing that I want to talk about is what makes someone, what makes a person worth taking a chance on? What is it that we need to have in place? What is it that we need to do or that might help us get that initial foot in the door? So you guys know in this day and age, we've got Instagram influencers of the world. They get tons of followers and then brands reach out to them and, do the product placement. They say, whoa, cool. Now, I am not suggesting that you need a ton of social media followers. No, that is not what this is about. What I am suggesting is that we want to create our own influence before we even get the job. Okay. So what is required for leadership like this? Like what makes a person an influencer on any level? Whether it's at your local drop zone and your local DZ family, or whether it's in the expanded community or the world. The following, what we're going to go through next, are my list of pillars. So your list of pillars might be different depending on who you are. So I invite you to consider mine and reflect on your own. So number one, the first is authenticity. You may know this person. Her name is Amy Shimalecki. She's wonderful. She is one of the most decorated skydivers around. She's a member of the Red Bull Air Force. She leads world records. She is a super hard worker, has definitely worked consistently around the world and in our sport. And she's one of the most real, honest, and open people that you'll meet. She's the best. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I want to make sure we have enough time for everything. So next, I would have you consider positivity. So when I was a younger jumper, I was wildly enthusiastic, as I've said. I'm sure the people who know me are like, really? Mel, you were wildly enthusiastic? Whatever, humor me. So I was always just so happy to be on the drop zone. I was happy to be with skydivers. I was happy to be learning. I was happy to be making friends. As a young jumper who was this enthusiastic, positive person, I actually had experiences with the, cool kids of the day where they actually really made fun of me for being positive and enthusiastic. And some people were even threatened by my energy, and so much so that they really took steps to try to undermine my opportunities to rise in leadership at my drop zone, to be a younger coach and organizer. What's fascinating, and I always think this is kind of interesting when I share about that point, is that it's definitely not lost on me that my entire career now in skydiving is built on my being positive and inclusive. By my real positivity for me is real. And so that's the thing. Building on number one, positivity for me is authentic. And heading into number three, I briefly mentioned it, is inclusion. So this idea of intentionally and actively making people feel welcome. I eventually got made fun of for this too, but in a really good way. where later in my career, people would be like pretending to be me or doing, you know, I don't know, impressions of me or whatever, and saying like, oh, peeps, 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 hey. Anybody? I'm not sure if there's mute going on. So, people who are unmuted, please mute yourselves. But yeah, so they would joke about how I would be, but really when I worked at Skydive Elsinore, and anytime I worked anywhere, I would seriously, legit, just walk up to people, hand outstretched, and say hi to people I didn't know or people I hadn't met yet. And I'd say hi and I'd be like, for real, hey, welcome. You know, I'm stoked you're here. Like, what's your name? And the thing is that I'd mean it. You know what I mean? I'd really mean it every single time. And so that's important as well, is like really stepping into and embodying and living into these things that we're talking about. So building on inclusion, building on authenticity and positivity and inclusion, it's more than just being nice and welcoming, is that it's a lot about really caring, you know, like actually caring about people. I joke that so for me, I really love people. Not everybody does, and I get that, and that's totally fine. But I joke that the people that I don't like, the people that I don't like, I like. And that's because I'm really deeply fascinated by the human experience. I mean, that's a big reason why I'm a life coach now as well. But actually caring about people will help you build real connections and real friendships with other people. So the legitimacy of your care will be felt, and it will fuel your efforts to be there for people in the ways that are appropriate, of course, and it'll fuel your deepening of friendships over time rather than, you know, sharing only superficial jokes and jumps, and all of that's great too. So it's not like it's a necessity, it's just to invite us into the power of this pillar. And just because I feel like sharing this, there's scientific evidence about friendship and its impact on us and our health. So yeah, keep that in mind. Friendship. All right. Next one. Yes, next one is have fun. Be willing to look ridiculous, to be ridiculous. In my experience, there is so much freedom in nonsense. And I believe this to be a true piece of our leadership. When people see the cool kids, you know, when people see cool kids free to have fun and be playful and dress up in the stupid costumes, and most people, or I would guess that most people then feel that much more free to be playful and have fun and be silly themselves. And so this helps us all collectively make new and more memories together. So like, just this is so silly, but wow, am I so grateful for all of these ridiculous memories that I have. That's at least something that I feel deeply and strongly about. All right, keeping going. The next pillar is consistency. So you might know this guy. Maybe you don't, but if you do, this is Dan BC. So Dan Brodsky-Chenfeld. He is totally awesome. He's an amazing leader in our sport as well. His book I highly recommend. It's called Above All Else. So you can get that on Amazon if you want to check it out. Really good stuff on his own trajectory and stories in skydiving as well. So Dan, he has been as consistent as they come in his love for and his commitment to our sport. And he's one of the most looked up to leaders in our sport as well. So Dan, he stands for a lot of things, and he is a huge champion of safety in our sport. So as am I, and as I would hope all of us are. But Dan is relentlessly consistent in his message. And as a result, he increasingly has earned and continues to earn respect and trust every time he leads in this way. And so that's the next thing, actually, that to build on this point of consistency is that leadership, impact, influence, those are all a long game, as in persistence. So Dan's story of coming back from a devastating plane crash to go on to win a world championships multiple times over and becoming the leader that he is, I mean, goodness gracious, if that's not evidence of persistence, I don't know what is. And at the same time, Dan's story is a big one, right? So I invite us all to remember that consistency and persistence is also built in all of the moments, big and small, you know? So it's in all those small moments of how we show up. So for Dan, you know, it's every time he shows up on a drop zone and greets you with a smile. You know, it's every time he thoughtfully answers a question on a four-way exit. It's every time he stands up at safety day, you know, so it's every time we do what we do. So, and that's my last pillar. So the last pillar of this section of the class today is integrity, right? We want to really bring ferocious integrity to the person that we want to be. So bringing that real fierce integrity to your word, to being kind, to the commitment to your goals, to your commitment to being of service in the ways that you can, your willingness to laugh, whatever it is for you, whatever person it is that you are and want to be, do it with real ferocious integrity. And so the question to that is why, right? Cool, Mel. Thanks for all these pillars. But why? Like, why does this matter? And it's that all of this stuff, all of these things that we're talking about builds trust over time, right? And all of this stuff that we're talking about makes up our character, okay? So like our character is what gets us hired. Our character is what gets us the best jobs available. Our character is what gets us the best jobs available consistently over time. Now, a quote I love on this idea is, charisma is what gets you in the room, character is what keeps you in it. So with that, I invite you to reflect. You know, I really invite you to reflect on this. You know, who are you? It sounds like such an existential question, but really, you know, who are you? What do you bring to the table? What do you bring to your drop zone? What do you bring to your interactions with other people? How do you approach the goals that you set? How do you handle setbacks and conflict? You know, just really get into this sort of personal reflection about who you are and how you're showing up. I mean, ultimately, it's sort of like, cool, you're a good person. You know, like I sort of think about this and I go, yeah, that's to me what I would like and define as a good person. So heck yes, if that's you, check. It's so weird with everyone muted, but I'm hoping that you're laughing. All right. So what about getting work? So how do we get our first gigs, right? So if you have been doing all of the things that we've been talking about already, you will, without question, already have a network of people who respect you, who like you, and probably even love you that you also love. That's my guess. I mean, maybe not, but that brings us to the next point is relationships. So getting started in the realm of work can feel weird. You know, basically we can wait for opportunities to come our way, or we can start to put it out there. You know, so my first tip is to simply start sharing with your friends. So start sharing with your friends that you are open to and up for doing more LOing and coaching as opportunities may arise, again, within the skill set that's appropriate for you. more directly, you can reach out to your friends and connection who are pros already, and you can let them know. You can let them know that you're open to being brought in as an LO or coach if they hear of any opportunities that might be a fit. Now, when you do this, you really want to tell people with humility and zero pressure, okay? Because we really want to stay humble anytime. I mean, just all the time, period, all the time. The reason I like making ego jokes so much is because I really feel deeply connected to true humility in our sport, both in just that. I mean, that's another webinar in itself. But so stay humble and stay detached from the outcome. So you're not asking them to do anything for you. You're simply letting them know that you're now open to new things, and if there's a win-win that crosses their path that you're a right fit for, then great. And if not, great, cool. So that really low pressure situation. My first skydiving gig, and I guess, I mean, I actually didn't get paid for it, but it was, so I don't know if it counts, but the first time I ever got a comp slot at a drop zone that was not my home drop zone, it was Z Hills. And gosh, I don't know, I don't remember what year it was. I want to say it was 2008, 9, 10. I can't remember. I should probably have that stat for this one. But anyway, so I go to Z Hills and I have this comp slot and I'm just like, oh my God. It rained the entire time. But it's Florida, so stuff's moving all the time. And we actually got 3 jumps. And you can bet your ass that I did my absolute best with those 3 jumps. I did my absolute best to help people still feel welcome, to help people still learn, to help people still have fun, even though it wasn't even close to an ideal skydiving weekend. And that's the next question, is how should we actually be when we are on site working as a load organizer to ensure that we do a really great job and that we get hired again? So I don't know if you guys can see the question mark. There you go. So as LOs, my take is that we are there to help the drop zone by helping their people. So we are there to help the drop zone safely fill airplanes and keep airplanes turning. We are there to help people be safe, to learn, to have fun, and to make memories. So keeping people safe encompasses the basics at any drop zone, working with any aircraft or airport. So all of that, I'm just going to lump that into one thing. Again, we could do an entire webinar on this section of today's talk alone, and we always can. By all means, let me know if you'd like me to do something like that in the future. But so the safety thing, of course, encompasses all of those things. And as an LO, you are in an even more powerful role of influence. So you have been brought in as an advertised cool kid, as an advertised leader. So, and there's so much influential power in this role. And so when I talk about this, I always tell people to think about Spider-Man. But really, seriously, with great power comes great responsibility. And so with that, the next thing I want you to really consider is always lead by example, like always. So know that you might be able to jump in certain conditions, but you are making decisions that are for the collective safety of the group and providing key leadership for young jumpers who are looking to you for what is cool, for what is okay, for what they should do. So on the heels of always leading by example, another thing is safety is always coolest, period. Just period, the end. No DZ or anybody wins when there's an incident, so really take this piece of your leadership very seriously. When we take this part of our leadership very seriously, then we are entirely free to have an insane amount of fun and learning inside of those boundaries. So really think about that, you know? And I contest this, that truly this is how we help those people we're jumping with make those memories that will support their own skydiving trajectories. So I know about, I don't know about you guys, but I have so many stories of people in my past that and jumps that I did that were so cool that really marked my memory, ways that people helped me that marked my memory. So that's the role that we're in and the power and the positive power that we have. So going on to the very nuts and bolts, of course, also jump by jump, we want to assess who we're jumping with and decide on the dive plan and what each person can do and the aircraft and the DZ and the weather conditions in mind, right? So we're talking about all these sort of, again, nuts and bolts of actually organizing. So I'm going to, again, go through these relatively quickly, knowing that so much more can be said in this particular area. But we want to set up the skydives for success first, you know, so you can see how people fly, and then you can get more creative with your dive flow and exit plans. And I mean it, guys. If you really want me to do a webinar on this, on really expanding on the details of being an LO, in my experience, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know. But for now, I want to move forward so that we can just continue to cover the foundational, big picture foundational pieces in my view. Cool. So for this session, I reached out to James LeBerry, otherwise known as the Godfather. James is awesome. If you don't know James, he's the best. But basically, James, and he runs a marketing company now called Beyond Marketing. So again, I highly recommend him as well. James ran the events and marketing at Skydive Carolina and completely revolutionized the boogie experience into essentially what we experience today, the best of the best. Yeah. We go way back. I look 12 in this photo. It's so adorable. Oh, God. But anyway, so James, he is also extensively experienced in events and major business. So he's experienced in both skydiving and outside of skydiving. And so I reached out to him for this session and I asked him point blank, why did you initially hire me for Carolina Fest? And his instant and easy reply, so instant one-word reply, was attitude. Now, I would be lying if I said this next section did not make me uncomfortable. Like, it definitely makes me uncomfortable to share the rest of what I'm going to share with you because it's all talking about me, which I don't love. But if it, I really want you to get the pillars that James shared. And I think sharing his verbatim reply has power in it. So that's what I'm going to do in hopes that it helps you. So helps you really understand the pillars of, again, what it takes to get hired for the best jobs in our sport. Okay. So James went on to say, after he said attitude, he said, I was never interested in hiring LOs based on how many medals they'd won. That never interested me. I was looking for a playmaker. At Sandals Resorts, there is actually a person known as a playmaker, and their job is to roam the resort and spot people who appeared to be on their own or not participating in things while the rest of that person's family did. The playmaker would bring people together for games of beach volleyball or shuffleboard, or simply bring someone a drink on the beach without someone having to ask for it. So from that experience, I was always on the lookout for who the best playmakers were, and you were the best. You didn't care if somebody had 50 jumps or 5,000 jumps. As long as the dive could be executed safely, you were always welcoming, which also leads to the next adjective. You were always approachable because of your attitude. He goes on to say, in my years of Carolina Fest, I always felt that you and Zach Sable, booyah, were my best LO hires because of those things. So if you're a newbie jumper, Oh, this is actually a beautiful point. If you're a newbie jumper, seeing the jumpers you read about in parachutists can be intimidating, much less being at a boogie. So to have the skydivers you read about embrace you at a boogie when you're out of your comfort zone, that's the magic. I agree. Like, I fully agree with James's response. And it's not because it's about, he happens to be writing about me and Zach in this case, but because that is really what I believe and see when I look at other people as well. And Zach, we actually hired him at Elsinore as well. We had him come in too because of the same things. It's good stuff. I love The Godfather. We could do so many different sub webinars on this whole talk. Oh my God. So, okay. So The Godfather, he's totally on his game. He's killing it. He's running Skydive Carolina. And, but I lived in Southern California. I mean, I did everything at Elsinore at that time and really wasn't traveling much then, or if at all then. And so how did James know about me? That that question brings us to another thing that really does help us rise in leadership and influence in the sport, and that is promotion. So back in the day at Skydive Elsinore, we did a good job of translating the electricity of inclusion and learning and fun into the things that we were putting into the wider reaching magazines. So we did a good job with that. We made a point to write for parachutists. We had this around the drop zone photo thing, which was happening every single week. And we shared the fun in as much as we could with as many as we could. And of course, this was a marketing effort. It was intended to inspire others in the community to come and join us at our events. And it was also to help inspire that energy and that type of vibe at their events as well. So yes, the magazines, I would say, do matter. Magazines and media do matter for sure. And once again, this is another piece of this whole pie that we could do an entire webinar on. We won't today. And just highlighting beautiful Melissa Nelson Lowe. Hello, darling. So all of that said about the magazines and media, I contest that the most powerful part of you being promoted is everything we've already talked about. It's you. It is how you show up. It is how consistently over time you show up. Okay? Word of mouth is a powerful force in the world. And it is a powerful force in our small community as well. And so I say small community. Skydiving is a worldwide community, but it is small, right? And so I invite you and I share with you, I say, trust that the consistency and integrity with which you show up and how you lead is actually the best business card you could ever have, and it's free. So think about that. Really, I cannot impress this point enough. I've obviously said it multiple times in different kinds of ways. Right on. Moving on to get to Q&A. The next thing to keep in mind while building your career, so you start working by just things to keep in mind while you're building and growing in the sport in this way, is to maintain your relationships. So this is actually funny. We, I don't know, back in the day, I guess it wasn't back in the day, it was a number of years ago. That was like 6 years ago. Anyway, doesn't matter. We did this thing called the Drop Zone Dance Off. It was actually something at Skydive Carolina, Jorge Alonso and I, it was on a weather hold, and we said, let's make a video. And we just did this ridiculous drop zone dance off thing, and it just went nuts. And people across the globe did different versions of their drop zone dance off. Just another thing to create the vibe of inclusion and fun and all of those things. So anyway, in this picture, this is actually the drop zone dance off that we did at Rappa Boogie in Germany. And the guy in the sweet stash in front is Rob Kendall, if you don't know him. we became friends over the years, going to boogies and stuff like that. But we also made a point to stay in touch and again, deepen our connection and friendship. And we always said that we had this dream that one day he'd host a boogie at his drop zone and I'd get to come organize at it. And it was years before that was a reality, but this picture is that reality where we were at his drop zone, his boogie, and I got to go organize at it. So anyway, so again, sort of maintain your relationships, really care to stay in touch. This is just another drop zone dance off pic. When we think of maintaining relationships, guys, it can totally be enough to talk to a person once a year. It also can go a really, really long way to earnestly and authentically stay in touch just periodically throughout the year. You know, Facebook comments are cool. You know, if you come across an article that you think they would benefit from, share it with them. It could be just an insight, a podcast, or, I mean, this is something I'm doing personally now as a sort of way to practice and elevate my own intuition, is that anytime I even think of someone, I'm making a point to send them a message. So it's a social experiment I'm doing on myself, but it's been wonderful because it has been opening up and just nurturing those connections that I care about. So similarly, with this point of maintaining relationships, something I would invite you to do is to build relationships with positive people, with positive leaders, and positive DZs. And so it's obviously it's a longer idea here, but Brad Cole, Brad Cole and I met back in the day at Couch Freaks, which is one of the sort of longest running boogies. And when we were at this event, and again, I don't remember what year this was, goodness, but we made a point to take time to sit together and actually get to know each other. He really said, hey, I'd like to let's have some time and sit down and just talk. And I always thought that was so cool that he did that. And again, not because it's about me, but because of the intentional effort to make a connection and to build a relationship with someone he wanted to build a relationship with. And I felt similarly. And so we did that. We sat on the couch, we powwowed about ideas, we, put in that time and made that effort. And so anyway, this picture is actually Brad and me leading a formation load tracking dive at Chicks Rock at Skydive Elsinore in 2011. So anyway, in this vein, guys, of building relationships with positive people, concurrently, I would also say actively do not align with those people who are not that. So actively step away and separate yourself and do not align with people who are being exclusionary and unkind. I really encourage people to do that, because trusting and, in my experience, truly being kind and inclusive is truly ultimately what will rise. And so I call people to play this kind of long game. And so I'm not saying that to be mean or anything. I'm just saying, like, it's okay to not be BFFs with someone or not be aligned with someone that you don't necessarily believe in how they're being or how they're treating others. So that brings us to our final section for today, is what do we do when we are communicating with drop zones? So we have work, we are potentially getting work, we're potentially getting repeat work. What does that look like? And what should we think about when we're communicating with drop zones or DZOs or DZMs? So this brings me to Pam in Skydive Orange. I know, Pam, I know you're on the call today. I love it. I love you. So Pam is wonderful. If you don't know her, I really think I encourage you to get to know her. She's the best. So part of my skydiving story includes a big break where I didn't skydive for almost 2 years, which was a big deal for me. So after traveling around the world and LOing and working in the sport for multiple years, and I got super burned out. I also at this time I was working through personal challenges and working through some fear of losing loved ones. So I really was in this tough spot. And so I took 2 years down to really rest, to not jump, to rest, to heal, to do a lot of personal inquiry and just I really doing the work to find my way back to the sport in a healthy and new way. I mean, God, guys, I'm so wildly thankful I was able to find my way back. I mean, I almost could cry thinking about it. Whew. So I was able to find my way back. I was able to jump again, and it was wonderful. And I shared about it online, and Pam emailed me and she said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come LO at Skydive Orange, for their big, awesome events like Big O and Cinco and stuff." And obviously, I've said how much I love Pam and Skydive Orange already. So I received Pam's email and I instantly felt nervous. So I kind of had like an internal freak out. And it had nothing to do with anything about Skydive Orange or anything like that. It was because I had just reconnected to my own energy and love for skydiving that I was really genuinely afraid to start LOing again like I used to, because I just was so afraid it would burn me out. And I was just not willing to do that. I was really not willing to burn myself out again. So, anyway, I was in this place basically of being very protective of my energy and my love of skydiving. So, I so anyway, sorry, I'm just thinking this through, but like I knew deeply, I knew clearly that I didn't want to be sort of the Melanie Curtis of yesteryear that was on every load, that had to turn rig, load one to sunset. I knew that that wasn't the right thing for me, but I wasn't really clear on what was the right thing for me. And so I took a big deep breath and I really thought about it. And I made myself think, like, what would it take for me to want to do this? If there was even a way. And so I like, what would it take for me to want to do this, to want to say yes to this job? How much would it cost? What would I do, etc. And in my reflecting, it became really clear to me that I wanted to go back to my roots, that the only thing I wanted to do or get paid for was to coach young jumpers on basic belly skills. That I really wanted to take my time on the ground and actually be able to coach and debrief and connect with the people that I was working with. So that's what I wrote to Pam. I said, "Hey, I've really thought about this, and it's clear to me that really all I want to do at this point is do basic belly skills camp, style coaching with young jumpers, the Melanie Curtis of our old boogie days. That person is gone. Like, so if you need someone to free fly, organize, or jump, I completely understand. That's totally cool. I'm happy to recommend people. If you need someone like that, happy to recommend people if that's what you're looking for. And yeah, if you'd like to have me come in and work with the younger crew, then I'd love to. I'm all for it." So I had no idea what Pam would say, right? I had no idea what she would respond or how she would take that. And even though I wasn't sure that I wanted to even work in the sport again, I really wasn't sure. I also really felt afraid of losing it too, because you work all your whole life and you get these opportunities, and then there's this fear that you'll lose them all. And so I was really feeling that. And so anyway, I send this email to Pam, and Pam replied pretty instantly. I mean, I don't know if it was like instant, but it was like same day or something like that. And she said, "Yes, that's awesome. We just want you." Whew, makes me cry. Sorry, guys. it makes me cry because it's so meaningful to be supported. All right. Water helps. Water helps. It makes so much difference. It makes so much impact to really support people and meet them where they are. And so this just was so, so hugely important to me. And of course, that's what we did. That's what these pictures are showing you. And it wasn't just Skydive Orange that responded like that to me. I had the same communications with Jumptown, and they said the same thing too. And so to extract insight from this story, these stories for you. So when I think about it, when communicating with drop zones, I would tell you to keep 3 things in mind. The first is transparent communication. Okay, so like really thinking about what is it that is a fit for you. Okay, like we have to really be honest with ourselves, because if we aren't open and we aren't really clear and we don't establish those expectations, then relationships with these really important people in your career can get muddled. You know, so really think about what is it that you want and need, and express that. Again, express that, and express it with respect, right? Respect for what the drop zone and their community uniquely needs. So just like, if you need a free fly load organizer, that's cool. You know, that's awesome. I fully support that, right? And also concurrently, always looking for the win-win. So the whole point of that is, if you're not a fit, that's okay. You know, if they need something else, that's okay. And that brings us to the last thing I would say is, you want to be detached from the outcome, right? So when you're communicating with drop zones and you're expressing openly and you're expressing with respect for their needs at their drop zone and their community, you really want to be okay with not getting the job. And I say that because when we are attached to outcomes, we can sometimes agree to things that aren't really what aligned. And when that happens, our energy diminishes. So, and that's something I only learned over time in the sport, is that if I agree to anything that isn't totally right for me, I am not as radiant and amazing at that job. And as a result, I run the risk of damaging the relationship, and run the risk of not getting hired again, because I've not taken responsibility for my part of only making a sort of an agreement that's a real true win-win and a real true fit for both parties. Sound fair? Cool. So yeah, so basically, guys, so I would say really and truly build your business relationships on these things. So showing up with this kind of integrity, right? This chosen way of being, all of this will help you, as we've said, build trust and connection on a professional level. All right, getting close. Thank you all for listening. I love you all. Okay, so now, Pico and Nadia. So my current home drop zone is Skydive Cross Keys, and their mission is to be the happiest drop zone in the Northeast. Like, come on, people, that's totally awesome. Like, clearly I am aligned with them. But even more than that, when I went to CK after my break, so after my 2-year break, even I was going back to do this first jump after not jumping for 2 years, and I was, just sort of on the other side of working through my fear. And even though I had 10,000 jumps at the time, I still felt scared and anxious and socially anxious, which might sound weird to you guys, but really and truly, it was sort of hard for me to go because of those feelings. And so I really had to work to get through those. And so anyway, I show up at CK feeling this way, and Pico and Nadia, without hesitation, supported me fully. Like I didn't even ask them, and they fully supported me. They welcomed me into their home. You know, they made me feel welcome and included in a time when I'll tell you that generosity and warmth went a huge, long way, because I was at a point where I was really feeling so uncertain. So their welcoming me into their home just made such, it was just really important to me. And it's just another example of doing that and being that way, and the beauty that comes from that. So anyway, I love them as well. Getting close, guys. So all right. So lastly, I would have us consider that our high level execution on all of these fronts, professionally and personally, can also open doors that we never could predict. So it's funny that now, in this weird time in history, we're living on Zoom these days. We're living sort of a digital life. But for the past 4 years, I have led an online skydiving group for newer jumpers. And that idea was actually born in the 2-year period when I was down, because I still wanted to help people and still wanted to coach and help other people. But I thought it was sort of a travesty that I had to be physically at a drop zone in order to help other people. And so then it just struck me like, oh my God, yeah, modern technology, fuck yeah, cool. And so we started this group, and literally every Monday night for 4 years, we've gotten on Zoom, and we talk and we have some laughs. I answer questions, I debrief videos, and, you know, we connect. You know, we have a crew, and people come in and out and this and that, and it's all good, no pressure, like that type of vibe. So anyway, I bring that up because the members of this group banded together and basically flooded PIA, the Parachute Industry Association, with nominations for me, and I ended up winning the first ever PIA Mentorship Award. And I don't love sharing about things that are about me. I have no interest in trying to sound cool. Why I share this is that if I share about this, and the concept of mentorship starts to be a thing for you or anybody else, and it inspires people to step up into being a mentor in their own ways, then fuck yeah, I'm all about that. So that's why I share that story. And the other image is when the WSN, so the Women's Skydiving Network, when they were seeking, you know, to put together a team of women to represent messages of bravery and equality and celebrate the 19th Amendment centennial coming up this year, I got the call. Every person in this picture got the call. You know, and they got the call because they embody and lead in the ways that we've talked about today. You know, so that's why I share this stuff. Now, if you notice, there's not a single skydiving picture in this entire presentation. Not a single free fall shot or canopy shot. And that's because I believe that our greatest success and ability to impact is always found in our people. It's always found in our closest relationships, and even with those we don't even know that we're impacting. And so whether you have any desire to work in the sport or not, my take is that staying safe, being positive, helping others, being brave, putting your effort into connecting and caring about others however you're able, that if we do that, no matter what, like we can never lose. Like we just can't lose being that and doing that. And so for me, it started, you know, sitting through the first jump course at my dad's house for the 50th time. It started eating free bread crusts on the side of the road in Australia. and it started being a young, enthusiastic newbie myself, right? So circling back to the beginning, all the way to the beginning, I would ask you, what stands out to you? Like, what stands out from today's talk? What fear or resistance might be trying to stop you, right? What excites you? What possibilities do you see as, potentially possible for yourself? And this is the life coach in me, but you're truly, how can you take action, however small, toward that today? For real. And I say that and I joke like, ha ha ha, life coach, whatever, take action, be accountable. But really, inspiration is nothing without the action to back it up. And so with that, guys, I thank you. And I say for sure, hit me up anytime. So for anybody who wants to join that new Skydiver group, you are welcome. That's the vsc.life. For any life coaching stuff, you can find me at my website, melaniecurtis.com. And Jay Maletsky and I do a podcast, which is centered around growth-minded concepts and spiritual seeking and just life lessons and stuff as well. And that's at trustthejourney.today. But yeah, guys, we have plenty of time left. So let's do some Q&A and we'll go from there. Let me bust out this chat that I have not looked at the whole time. So talk to me, peeps. What do you reckon? Anybody have any questions that you'd like me to ask? Let me scroll back through this. I already answered a question. Cool. I'll actually scroll through the chat. Why not? Oh, Ken, yeah, for sure, Ken. I wish I could stay longer. Okay, no worries. I'll send you the recording. You are my spirit animal. Thanks, Richard. That's so funny. Dan's book is also available on audiobook. Yeah, for sure. Get Dan's book for sure. Scott says that's a huge point. Not sure what you're talking about, but let's see. I have landed airplanes with people and I don't regret it. And I was thanked for it. If I do something on the edge that carries more weight and condones it in people's minds. Absolutely. Chantal, thank you. Already so much inspired. Oop, there's my cursor. Okay, Cicely says, how can you tell the difference between imposter syndrome and genuinely not being ready to take on a leadership role? Yeah, good question. I would say that, again, go back to and talk to people and be more detailed in your conversation with someone that you trust. So, and again, feel free to drop me a line. That's fine. I'm happy to hear about this stuff too. And again, guys, I'm not trying to sell the group or anything, but this is partly why I started the group, is that I would get a lot of questions and I'm happy to answer them. And another reason I started it is so that my answers and the time I spent writing back to people would go to help more people. So, but anyway, sorry, Cicely, not trying to, again, whatever. So I think it comes with getting some supportive feedback from someone that you can trust, but also sharing in detail where you are so they have a really informed place about where you are in your skydiving trajectory, right? And so then when we also make decisions about when we start to do stuff like this, we can start as small as we need to start. So that's why I talk about doing 2 ways and 3 ways, is that we don't necessarily need to be this big organizer to start getting and earning these skills, and that we can step into something that we know that we can handle. That like, okay, I can do a 2-way with someone else and I can try to remember what I see so that I can tell them after our jump what happened. So that doesn't have you having any major responsibility outside of you guys going and doing a skydive together, right? So you don't even have to frame yourself as an organizer in that type of way, so that you can just go on a 2-way and just tell them and say, hey, I'm just going to try to remember what you do and I'm going to try to recount what happened on our skydive to you when we land. That could be an easy place to start that doesn't require even any input. Sound fair? Oop, there it is. Let's see. Gotta go. All the best. Yeah, cool. Cool. Thank you for sharing insights. Big hug from Belgium. Yes, I love it. Okay, Jessa, let's see. How do you manage or deal when you have to leave someone out of a jump, especially someone with fewer jumps level who will feel left out? Okay, cool. Yeah, great question. Super great question. I'm actually going to stop the share so that I can just see all you guys again, guys. Um, yeah, how I handle that. Bella, you dork. I love it. So how I handle that is I'm honest, and I say, oh, it's for safety, and it's in this particular setting, it's important that you not be a part of this particular jump, but it's not because we don't want to include you. It's not that we don't want to help you be a part of stuff, but like we'll go on this jump and maybe you can do something smaller and maybe we can organize something smaller later on. But really telling them and being nice about it. You know what I mean? Because I think young jumpers also need to learn that it's not exclusion when we have to make decisions as a load organizer for safety. So we tell them it's about safety, and they might disagree. That's totally normal. They might, and again, we have to watch for the whole Dunning-Kruger thing when people think they're better than they are. And that can be challenging to deal with. But as a leader, it's important that we don't bend because of someone's emotional response. So as saying that and caring about someone's emotional response, because it's not like I just want people to feel pissed and bad. That sucks. It's that we know that there's two things at play, right? That we're the leader, that the important part is that we make decisions that lead by example and promote safety as first and foremost. We share that. And if we have reasons why that make sense that we can kindly share, we want to share those. We can say, just not quite sure how you fly yet, and it's too large of a group. I don't feel comfortable, and I just want to make sure everyone stays safe. So let's do something separated for this one and see what we can put together going forward. So that's in general how I would do it. I hope that helps. Okay, Stacy asks, how do you handle the young jumper? Oops, there's my internet connection. So Stacy says, how do you handle the young jumper who doesn't want to improve their skill set, but always wants to be a part of your organized jumps? Example, jumper with approximately 200 jumps, but has, I got cut off, but yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's the same answer. It's really the same answer. And it's the same answer. And I would encourage them to get coaching. I would encourage them into the style of skydive that would be a path for them getting on the skydive with me, the bigger jump or whatever jump that they're wanting to be on. I would educate them. That's my job. That's my role, is to kindly help people learn and understand, and then have access to a understanding that there's a path available for them, that all they have to do is take it, right? They might not like it. And I can say that too. I mean, like, listen, I know it sucks. Like, I remember, and tell a story about your own self and be like, I remember when I wanted to be on the big stuff and I couldn't. I wasn't ready. And that's part of what we do in our sport to stay safe for both ourselves, but also to be a part of being safe for the people that we're jumping with. So I just hold firm on those core pillars, and I'm kind and I educate them as much as I can. And the rest you have to sort of accept how people respond and react to you. Yeah. If there are lots of different skill levels, say on a 4 to 6 way, how do you accommodate the least skilled but be the least skillful but keep the most skillful included? Yeah. So when I have a group like that, and there's it depends on whether I've jumped with the younger jumpers before, and actually everyone before, because people can say they're awesome and they are not. That is totally possible, which is why I mention making sure you figure out ways to jump with people so that you get your eyes on people to really see what they can do, and then you can really organize with a lot more freedom. But in the start, I really start relatively slow so that I can get eyes on people and see what they can do, so that I know I'm organizing safe jumps for them. So again, it's that bubble of awareness and knowing what people are capable of. So if I have a skillful group and I have maybe one or two newbies, and this is maybe in the realm of belly. This is, I think, a separate conversation for free fly jumps. But if we're talking about belly jumps, it depends on how skilled the other people are, whether they are just medium skilled, that like, can they track away and escape? Can they get away? That's a big thing that I think about. And I will include the young jumper in the middle. So I'll have my hands on them the entire time. They can't escape me. Like, even if the funnel, like we funnel or some weird, the skydive is built around me as the organizer connecting with that young jumper. So they are in the skydive no matter what, and everything else sort of builds around that. That's one way that I do it. And I don't necessarily tell them that. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just say, you're here and let's do this thing. If there are two young jumpers, it's a judgment call. It's a total judgment call. How much do I know about them? How many jumps do they have? Do they have any insight? And do I have any other information from other organizers about their ability to safely track away? Stuff like that. All the things that I need to know about their ability to function. And if I decide to include both young jumpers in a particular belly way, the same thing. They both will be with me. That's a risk, though, because theoretically one can escape. Right? Like if the exit funnel. So you have to mindfully make those decisions. It's not always that that's necessarily super unsafe and you can't do that. It's more just being mindful about what you're choosing. I wouldn't necessarily do that on a 10-way or bigger way, because it's just a lot of people, you know what I mean? And who knows how that's going to go. If everyone else is super skilled, then it's not as scary. You see what I'm saying? So it's really situationally dependent, and it really depends on the people, but that's kind of where my thought process goes. All right. How do you manage when some person of the group you are leading is a little bit dangerous, not only once, but in every jump? Yeah, good question. I talk to them. I am honest with them. This is the part of being a load organizer and a leader that's really important, is that you can't be that person who is afraid to help people learn from their being unsafe. At Skydive Elsinore back in the day, anytime there would be some landing issue or something that I might see, I was standing in the loading area, I would always just sort of walk out calmly, and I would ask the person, hey, tell me, like, what happened, like what just happened. And I would really invite them to first share with me what they thought happened, so that I can know how aware is this person about what they just did and the potential safety issue that just occurred with them, right? So I can do that, and I get a sense for where they are in their awareness, or not. And from there, it's making, again, those judgment calls. So if they aren't aware, I would definitely take the time to thoughtfully and gently educate them. Sometimes not as gently, right? And I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean that in a direct way, so that people have a memory of that conversation with me and they're like, fuck, I'm never going to do that again. And it's not that you want to necessarily like freak people out or anything, but sometimes those kinds of really direct conversations make an impact that you do not forget. And that impacts the skydiving community and our overall safety. And I care about doing that. So again, I would invite all load organizers or people who care to be a load organizer or coach or whatever, or just anyway, lead in this type of way, to learn conversational skills that are sensitive to people's emotional reactions. Because when you can navigate those things, you can do it, and you can get the importance of what you're sharing across. So we can talk about that. Again, that's an entire another webinar. So anyway, so to answer your question more fully, Catalina, is that if they consistently continue to be unsafe, I stop jumping with them. If they consistently be unsafe in the point where I would tell the SNTA, I would for sure bring the SNTA into the conversation and talk to this person. Like, we can't fuck around. You know what I mean? I would do my very best to help them. But if a person is really being legitimately unsafe and not listening at all, I would get a even higher authority figure involved. All right, cool. Okay, has no desire. Oh, to advance their skills. Yeah, okay. I always feel confident when it comes to do coaching with newbies, but I always have a fear of which drop zone I should go and will they accept me as a coach. So I never try my luck. Can you give a suggestion of what I should do? Yeah, that's a great one. Again, it takes bravery, and this is why I mentioned bravery, is that it takes a bit of courage to put ourselves out there. And it also takes those skills of, crafting an email or crafting a communication that is transparent, is humble, and is clear, right? And also fully detached from the outcome, right? But you can totally put yourself out there, and you can say, I might not be a fit for you, and that's totally okay, but I'm new, and this is the kind of coaching that I do. And ask your friends who know your skills to give you a reference. If I know you and I've, know your skills, say, hey, Mel, can I drop your name and say that you could vouch for me or my skills? And for the record, people have asked me to do that before, and I will not do that if I don't know people's skills. I care ferociously about my integrity of my word, like we said earlier. And so that way, when a person does get a reference from me, it's legit. Okay. And so that's what I would say. So if it's not me, maybe who in your circle that is a more trusted or experienced person knows you that can serve as a reference. All right. We are almost out of time. Actually, we're almost out of time, guys. So I'm going to look through the rest of these questions on my own, and I'll do my best to post about the rest of the questions so that we can get everything answered. But I love and appreciate you all, and I thank you, and I hope this was of high value to you. And for real, drop me a line anytime if I can help in any way. Right on, guys. Bye.